Hi, my name is Kerrie Douglas, and I'm an assistant professor at Purdue University in the School of Engineering Education. And today I'm going to be talking with you about student experience and social supports in online engineering courses during COVID-19. As you all know, the pandemic forced quick changes on campuses globally. Instructors were given little advance notice for moving their courses online. Many faculty have never taught a course online before, and different institutions were providing different levels of institutional support for the change. Furthermore, it's one thing to put a lecture-based course online. We can make videos, and while it's inconvenient and we didn't plan for it, there's research and ways that can be done to help guide. However, there's very little guidance on how to do labs or team-based, service learning, project-based, design courses. Things that are more interactive. And most of the research in distance education is with very different student populations. Often it's with graduate students or with adult learners, and those are quite different than the students that most of us are interacting with in our undergraduate engineering courses, where the students are, have expectations of connecting with each other and being on campus. So there's been some early work coming out on engineering education during COVID-19. For example, there have been researchers at the University of Georgia that surveyed students and found that many of the student participants described negative emotions, experiences, and opinions. And this was quite a bit different from the faculty surveyed, who reported feeling very well supported during this time. In addition, researchers at Stanford found that 31.9% of undergraduates have been satisfied or extremely satisfied with the quality of courses, and that same percentage were also dissatisfied or extremely dissatisfied. And so there's definitely students experiencing different things and emotions, feelings during this time. When asked to describe their feelings in words, the students wrote things such as being overwhelmed, unmotivated, bored, restless, sad, lonely, grateful, fine, and content. So you can see that there is a wide range of emotions and feelings with the engineering students. So during this time, myself and my colleague, Julie Martin at the Ohio State University, began discussing more about how students were doing, and just personally having known lots of students and seeing how they were struggling, we started really thinking about the social capital that students have on campus and the supports that they receive, and whether or not that those students were still having access to those same levels of support. And so we reached out to the NSF, and I'm happy to say that 2 weeks ago we were funded to study the contextual choices that engineering instructors made during COVID-19 and how those are associated with undergraduate engineering students' academic social capital and achievement of their learning outcomes. So we want to learn, how are instructors fostering student social supports during this time of pandemic, and why do students perceive these supports as being helpful or unhelpful in their achievement? So as I mentioned, we've only had funding for 2 weeks. The data was still coming in as of Monday. And so today what I'm really going to focus on are what are the perceived challenges and supports for engineering students during COVID-19. And so you get an idea of the participants that we had. We've so far had 148 students take our surveys, and approximately 55% of them have been first-year students. However, we have had students that are in their more advanced and further along as well. Also of interest maybe that 22% of our respondents are international students, and 66% of them have been sheltering at home. In the survey, the questions were focused on the challenges that students have had and how their interactions with peers and instructors have changed or are similar. Participants were also asked to complete a name and resource generator, which essentially asks the students to list out up to 5 people who are most supportive of them or the most important to their academic, achievement, and then to list the ways that that person supports them. So now I'm going to go through some of our preliminary results. The first is that students describe peer relationships as very important for learning. So some of the quotes included, "I miss being able to hang out with my friends and study together in person," or "I had little interaction with other students except for my engineering group. After moving to remote learning, I felt like I was pretty much on my own." Another student said, "Our professor had a couple assignments where we messaged in small groups." Another said, when they were in person, usually during lecture, I would discuss lecture quiz questions with classmates, but I wasn't able to do that. And another student said, other students in the course are the reason I passed my courses. They could explain difficult concepts in different ways than the instructors did. Another result we found was that students need to be supported in their motivation, study habits, and managing their time. So some of the students said things like, "Staying focused and getting my work done despite having very little structured time has been challenging. My challenges include getting a schedule, finding motivation to do the work since there was no one else to motivate me." Another student said, "I've definitely become a lazier student because of it." Another said, "Motivation to learn and participate is infinitely more difficult when 4/6 of my courses went to asynchronous." Students also need access to timely feedback and live discussion with instructional team. So some of the quotes we have from students here are, "The questions not answered as quickly, it's inefficient. I can't go up to my professor and ask follow-up questions after lectures and have a conversation with them." Another said, "I never got personal interaction. It was simply going between recorded lecture and homework." Another student described the awkwardness of not understanding when they did write back. So it said, I don't understand their explanation, and I feel weird asking them twice." Well, not all of the results were on the negative nature. We also found some positive things because of this time. So one that we noticed right away is that students are able to adapt. So some of the quotes we have from this is a student saying, "I believe this experience has made me a more adaptable person for the future. And I have found a way to adapt to online lectures and have actually learned to manage my time better." Another student said, "My time became more flexible. I could arrange my time freely." From the name and resource generator, what we were able to do, it was to sum up the number of resources and who was providing those resources before the COVID-19 and during the time of the pandemic. And what this graph shows us right away is that students perceived greater access to support from all of their important relationships before COVID-19. Most dramatic is we look at that faculty and staff and the peer level drop-offs. Those are huge changes in what students perceive as support before COVID-19 and the rest of the semester. And the things that they were saying would count as something of support would be helping with an assignment, the recommended coursework, whether they were informed about internship opportunities, professional development, etc. I mean, these really are where we were seeing the most dramatic decreases. And so now we're going to give you some initial recommendations that are based off of our findings as we look forward to the fall and the unknown of exactly how campuses are going to be educating their students. But the first is to facilitate more peer interactions. Even if they're not team assignments, to group students into semester-long groups. You can establish course virtual co-working times, just times for students to sign up that, hey, I'm going to be working on my homework at this time, and they can do a Zoom meeting or something else. And so providing the structure and accountability that the students actually participate so they can ask each other questions. Also, encourage students to set goals and communicate their progress with each other. We also think that, setting up a course-wide and group-level communication tool. And my one caveat with this is for programs and different courses to try to have some uniformity so that a student doesn't have to download, 5 or 6 different tools or become familiar with, several tools in order to do this. But many of the students made references to the courses where they had, Slack or Zoom or GroupMe and all these other things, and that they really did facilitate more of that interaction. The other thing is having some of those synchronous times. So while the video can be watched at any time, having that real live conversation, not just typing, but person-to-person interaction is important to the students. Another recommendation is to establish informal ways for students and instructional team members to interact. So some ideas for this might be to have regularly established virtual office hours, to start an online link 10 minutes early and then stay an additional 10 minutes, similar to how we might show up in class 5 minutes before class starts and be around for 5 minutes after class start. And that way students have the opportunity to just quickly ask questions. It's also important to set expectations on how students can ask questions and what the time frame is for feedback. So for example, if there are several different modes, like there's the discussion board maybe in the learning management system, and then there's also some messaging app, and then there's also email, how would you prefer students to address you with questions? And how can we improve that efficiency? So if a student has a question, is it possible to post it in a way that all the other students can see it, and maybe that will get them thinking about it as well? And then also knowing when you, as an instructor, are able to get back with them. Another thing that we have used is using a video tool to provide brief feedback at that class level and enable responses. So again, the more we can get our faces in front of the students and having some of that personal interaction, it really is meaningful to them. And they do see that value, because just looking at the content isn't necessarily, they can watch a video or they can read a textbook, but feeling that they have that direct contact with an expert of that content is really valuable for the students. And I think that's something that our students really do expect. So another is to establish structure and communicate weekly course routines. So, each week posting, a weekly schedule of what the activities and the to-do lists are. And this may seem like a little more hand-holding than what we're used to, but there is so much unstructured time and there's so much for them to keep track of, that having one spot for each course where it just, okay, for this week, this is everything that I need to do, would really help them. Another is by creating weekly routines. So for example, deciding, each week you'll complete your readings by Tuesday, then do your individual portion of the assignment. After you do that, you'll meet with your team to discuss the homework or the topic, and then we'll see you on class Thursday. So again, like really getting them into a routine where they're seeing that the learning's happening all throughout the week and knowing really clearly what needs done when. Also having milestones to submit for feedback and ensure that there is ongoing progress being made on the projects where there are larger deliverables, and setting clear expectations for the amount of time that you are expecting students to devote to the learning activities, and then being open to the feedback when the students may consider it takes longer than what they were hoping or longer than what you were hoping. And then also to be proactive in starting conversations and to check in with students. I know for those of us who are student-centered in our teaching approaches, we walk around. Like, I don't wait when I'm physically in class for students to ask questions. When they're working, I'm often walking around asking, how's it going? What are you working on? Where are you at with this? Or asking questions. And I think with the virtual instruction, it's also important for us to be proactive and prompting the students and asking them, how they're doing or what they're working on and what questions they might have, and seeing what things come up. And our fourth recommendation is to use your expertise when it matters most. And the student-instructor interaction really matters as much as the content. So you can identify what resources communicate the content already. There's YouTube, there's textbooks, there's MOOC lectures, but really it takes thought and thinking about what is, the value that students have from access to you. So identify what students need to hear from you and what's the best way for them to get it. Another is creating short videos that are more likely to be watched, and chunk your content. So we didn't get into all the results here today, but another result that we did see was the students really struggling to watch the videos even when they knew they were going to be quizzed on them. They were saying there's so many distractions, and so really keeping those lecture videos short and to the point, and then again, thinking about, okay, so if this is content they need to learn, what's the best way for them to learn it? Can they read it in a textbook and then do some assignment where they're trying to apply it, and then your time be spent giving the feedback? So really thinking about how to meet the students where they're at. And then giving student feedback on their work and answering questions is as or more important than lecturing. So again, the value of the education really is coming from the access the students have to the faculty instructor, to that expertise. And it's also remembering that all the conversations that we have with students apart from the learning objectives of that course. So making sure that we're still reminding students about internship deadlines, or talking to them about professional development opportunities, really building in all the ways that we support students outside of just meeting those course objectives. So as I mentioned, we've only had funding for 2 weeks and have been really inundated with this data. So please stay tuned if this is of at all interest to you, because through this next month, we will definitely be creating more materials and some handouts with recommendations that are based off of more of our findings. And so please do stay tuned, because I am sure that we're going to continue to find some really, really important things. So, and then I just wanted to say thank you for watching this and staying with me. I'm here to answer questions, and then also acknowledge that my collaborators, Julie Martin, who's at the Ohio State University, and Amanda Johnston, who is at Purdue. So, thank you.